enough to go into the sports. You want it more than the people that are known, then you're going to make it. It's just believing in yourself, because if you don't believe in yourself, why should anyone else believe in you?
Good afternoon and welcome to the Reflective Coach podcast with me, Coach Luca. You can find the podcast on Spotify and YouTube, as well as Anchor and Podcast Addict. You can also reach out on LinkedIn and Twitter at any time as well. In this episode, I was delighted to welcome referee and coach Shelley Howard. Shelley is a young female ref who has started her coaching journey and has embarked on it for many years now. She has much experience and she continues to grow with the game, and her knowledge is extensive. However, that doesn't mean that any issue does not exist, because we are in the world of football. She regularly faces issues, and they're on and off the pitch as well. And they're everything that you can expect the referee to go through when you talk to a referee or talk about what they do. It's great to speak to Shelley in an open and honest manner about this experience, as well as her wider experiences and what she goes through weekly and how she controls her game. It was great to get a perspective and insight from a referee after we spoke to players, former players and coaches, and it was great to try and get another insight from a different angle of the game. So it was great to talk to someone like Shelley, who has that balance between coaching and refereeing, where she can take her understanding and knowledge into her coaching, as well as understanding what it's like for a referee when she is coaching as well. She's a fantastic ref and has a big focus on refereeing at the minute, with the outlook on coaching and that combination of whether it's going to be a combination of both long term, or she follows one route more than the other. Anyone who's coached, managed by someone like Shelley, who has this mix of a background between ref and coach, provides great knowledge and support when they're on the pitch and being coached or managed by Shelley. Shelley understands the game and the laws and how to get the best out of her team in terms of how a ref would view a situation, in terms of what the referee's situations are, and by her reffing experiences, when she then goes into certain situations or games, having previously reffed those games, she then knows what the experience will tell her about how that situation or game may go. I really enjoyed talking to Shelley, and there's so much in this episode which you can get out of it like I did, and she was wonderful in the fact that she was open to so much. Again, you can listen to this on Spotify and YouTube, as well as Anchor and Podcast Addict. Drop a like, drop a follow and a subscribe. You can do this on Twitter and LinkedIn as well. This is Coach Luca, the Reflective Coach podcast. Follow us on Twitter at TRC Podcast _. It'd be great to see you there. It's great to connect with other like-minded people, other coaches, other professionals, those who may be fans, and the wider audience. This podcast covers so much, and I hope you enjoy it as much as I do. From me, I hope to see you soon, and there's so many great episodes on their way out. This is Coach Luca, the Reflective Coach podcast.
I've mostly been asleep and then got a drink with a friend, but I've got a cough, so I'm trying to get over it at the moment. I don't know if you can hear my voice cutting out.
Yeah, no, it's not too bad actually. I know a lot of illness and that is on the way around, so a lot of people that I work with have been quite unwell this week, so you sound perfect compared to them now.
I was bedbound on Tuesday. I'm a lot better than then.
I was going to say, you look quite, healthy, happy, considering the kind of lifestyle that you have between football coaching and refereeing, because I know a lot of people who wouldn't look as good when they're in that sort of industry.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I'm injured at the moment, so I've not been doing too much refereeing, but I've been coaching like there's no tomorrow.
And that's the way it usually tends to go. If you're not ending up doing one thing such as coaching or reffing or studying or anything like that, you sort of end up doing one or the other in a merry-go-round, it would seem.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of balancing it out, just making sure there's 100% at all time.
Oh, well, I must say, it's great to have you on as a coach, student, and referee. And actually the first referee that is going to feature on the podcast, which is great, and to have those insights. But I must say, you're very brave to be a referee.
Yeah, I get told that a lot.
Absolutely. I've reffed a couple of games over the last 2 weeks just in school football between some girls, and it's been quite nice to sort of just referee those games and just be with the girls and just get those games going as such. But if I had to go into a league game, there's no chance that I would referee one of them.
Yeah, no, it's kind of just about like coming across confident, even if you're not confident at all. You just gotta act like it, and then get the respect from the players, and they won't give you any nonsense really.
Absolutely, and even if you don't get that respect or there's a falling out, at the end of the day, the referee's the one with the final say, so the power, and once the referee's mind is made, that's sort of game over as such. There's no changing it. So, whether you want to argue, once the referee's made that decision, the decision's made.
Yeah, exactly. Except with VAR, and there's no point going to the ref. Wrong decision's been given, then it's going to change anyway. But we don't get that luxury, so there's no point arguing with us. We're not going to change our mind.
Exactly, because I've never ever seen it on TV, when a player's been red carded and suddenly a player or the captain's gone rushing over and then a referee's gone, oh, do you know what? You make a good case for that. I'm actually going to rescind that and give it a yellow instead or whatever.
Exactly. I mean, we just go with, we get one opportunity to see something. So we've got to go with our gut. If we think there's been a bad tackle, then if it hasn't, then we apologise. But we've seen it as a bad tackle, so we're giving it as whatever we need to give it as.
Absolutely, and I'm a coach. I'm a manager of an under-19s team. We play in quite a competitive league, so obviously emotions can get quite high once you're in a competitive league, and once the players start getting older, and you can see the coaches from the other side getting quite irate. My assistant manager gets quite irate as well. The players are losing it, and then you sort of see and feel for the referee in the middle of the pitch. And I think no matter how bad the situation is or how difficult, by me bollocking him or having a go at him or her in the centre of the pitch, it's not going to help the situation. And I usually tend to stay quite quiet to it. And if we just got to go with how the game sort of flows. And at the end of the day, it's a grassroots game. We're not filming every moment of it and analysing it. And some days we just got to move on from that decision and just get on with it.
Exactly. And one decision isn't going to change the entire game. I mean, if we give a penalty and it's not meant to be a penalty, then you should be playing good enough that you're not going to let that one goal affect your performance. But if you keep arguing with the referee, they're not going to be your friend and they're not going to do you any favours.
Of course, and in my team I have quite a few ex-academy players, so obviously they play quite high level, quite high intensity, and now they're playing grassroots. It's not always the exact same intensity or quality as such as what they're used to, so I can completely understand in terms of some of the decisions and aspects of the game and what happens in those moments. But no matter what referee that we've had over the last few weeks, I'm just thinking whether it's the very old referee that we've had who's in his 70s but still loves to get out and do it, whether it's the young referee who is explaining every decision that he has made, or the referee who has been a UEFA assistant in games and has flown abroad and has this experience. They've moaned about every referee out of those three they've had, and I'm like, well, which one do you want? Do you want the one who's committed and still giving up his weekends, the UEFA Pro one, or the one who explains every decision? Because on a balance, they all have good aspects.
Exactly. And the annoying thing with being a referee is even if we have a perfect game, the decisions aren't going to both sides. So we're going to have people arguing, even if they know it's a completely perfect decision. It's not gone their way, so they're going to challenge it. It's like, well, we know we've made the right decision. You don't necessarily know all the rules inside out, but we do, or we try to at least.
Absolutely, and it's that depth which you do study into, and even if the referees got together and explain rule changes or kept up with CPD, etc., you're going to know the rules of the game and the laws of it a lot more frequent than a regular typical coach in that aspect, unless they're sitting on some panel and as qualified as a ref or whatever that is. But typically, you would know a lot more about those laws.
Yeah, exactly.
And so in that aspect, is refereeing something you always wanted to do, or was it something you sort of fell into?
So I never really gave a thought about refereeing growing up. I was actually a swimmer. I was swimming up to 9 times a week, going before and after school. But I got injured when I was 12, and my brother had just turned 14, and he got into refereeing, and he said to me, "You'll never be able to do it. The abuse you get, you just start crying in the middle of the pitch." I was like, okay, that's a challenge set for me. So I went and I did the course. I was the only girl on the course, and I did it when I was 16, and I was with all my little sister's friends from school, and they were kind of looking at me just like, why is she doing it so late? Why is she doing it? Because she's a girl. And I was like, okay, and prove your point to all the men out there that don't think I can do it. And then just fell in love with it, and I've carried on doing it for a few years now.
And it can be difficult because when you're such a young person, as you say, 16, even reffing any game of, any magnitude level, opponents, whatever, it can be quite difficult as such a young person to be in the centre of that pitch for the first time and to be in that environment when everything is around you, because you're literally in the middle of that environment. Whether you walk out past the fans, the spectators, past the players, coaches, you still have to leave. Even on a typical grassroots pitch, you have to get to your car, and you just feel that sometimes you want to run to your car and get out of it because of what you faced. But as a young person, that could have been so difficult to even embark on that challenge. And even, after 5 games, you could have went, you know what, that's enough for me. I've experienced it. I took that step up. I was a female ref. I gave it a go, and you tick those boxes, but you're still going, you're still taking part in it. And it's a lot of referees that you do see at a young age or even at other ages walk away from it because of the experiences that they have. So it takes a lot to remain as a referee and to still keep pushing. And it just shows that resilience and that skill set which you have, which is truly amazing.
It's really sad. I know so many people that have done the course, and initially they said, "Oh, it's just to get some pocket money," because I mean, in London, it's so hard to get a job under the age of 16. So to be able to earn, I don't know, 20, £30 just for one game on a weekend for a 14-year-old is amazing. But to keep them in the game after getting so much abuse from parents who just want their like precious son or daughter to be the favourite of the referee, it doesn't always work like that, but you're pushing referees out of the game. And it's why there aren't that many to choose from when you get to the top level. It's
Absolutely,
really sad.
and it is very sad, and especially when all you have is a young person or individual as such as yourself, regardless of the age, who just wants to give something back to the sport and referee and be in the middle of those games and just, contribute and be part of that. To be driven away is such a difficult aspect to sort of consider.
Yeah. And my dad used to hate coming to watch me or my brother referee because he was just scared that he would hear us getting abused and not be able to hold himself back, going towards a parent saying, "That's my child on the pitch." But a lot of people don't have their parents there to protect them. And most of the time, I don't have anyone. I go by myself, I drive, or I get public transport. And as you said, sometimes I just want to run to the car at the end of the game because I don't want parents coming to me, yapping at me, saying how I did an awful job, because if I've done an awful job, I know I've done a bad job and I'm going to reflect on it. But most of the time, I don't think like that. I know I've made one decision at least in every game because someone can't be perfect. I'm still human. But the last thing I want is someone who's double my height at least, because I'm a tiny person, and double my age, coming to me, shouting at me that I've made the wrong decision, because I know that already.
Absolutely, and it's difficult then, even for when your parents want to come and watch you, and it's difficult for them to sort of hold themselves back and just watch the abuse go your way, which is very difficult, and especially when you're trying to give back. And at the end of the day, what most parents have to realise and remember is it's just a grassroots game. It's not the Premier League. You're not the high flying levels, and I know emotions can fly high. I know they've given a lot to the game, and their son, a child, daughter is still playing at some kind of level. They want to try and get the points. They want to win trophies with their teams. I get that, but just let the coaches coach, referees ref, and the players play. And that's why sometimes I love academy football, especially at the likes of clubs where they don't allow spectators to even come into matches, or they have to be behind a window and you can't hear them. And I think that any club which doesn't have that should either look into it or try to stop spectators coming in as such. And I know it's a bit different on various levels, but when it comes down to young people in that academy setting as such, where that funding and money is more available, then I don't think spectators should even be allowed anywhere near the pitch.
Yeah, exactly. And in grassroots football, they've tried introducing having a barrier 1 or 2 meters away from the pitch. But from my experience, I keep having to go up to the parents and even the siblings of the kids playing and say, "Please, can you step back?" I love doing adult football when there's a stand and there is that kind of knowledge that you stay in your seat. Yeah, you can shout whatever, but we probably can't hear you because there's such a difference between the stand and the centre of the pitch. But grassroots football, it's such a problem that people just can't keep their mouths shut. And if you want to get involved in the team, then volunteer to coach or go and do your refereeing course. But people don't do that. They think they know best just from watching on the TV and watching pundits who are also talking nonsense.
Of
But
course.
that's football at grassroots.
Of course, and in that point that you make there, whether it's go and do your own referee course, I know my assistant manager. I was talking to him when he was managing a 16s game last year, before the boys stepped up the under 19s level, and one of the parents was just hurling abuse at him all game long, and his team were 1-0 up at the time, but he had constant abuse from the opposition parents, and he was reffing and trying to coach at the same time. So he literally stopped the game, walked over this parent, addressed him, and said, "Why don't you referee?" Thinking that he's going to put him on the spot and he's going to go no. But this parent actually went, "Yes, all right then, I'll ref." So as he's handed him the whistle, the cards, etc., and stepped off the pitch, this parent's come onto the pitch, blown the whistle, and awarded a penalty to his son's team. Suddenly the game goes 1-1. A couple of minutes later, he blows again, penalty, 2-1, and they score, and they win the game 2-1.
Yeah, it's a real problem. And I mean, referees do. I've never said, "Oh, you referee the game," because I wouldn't want to risk anything like that. And at the end of the day, if I'm saying to someone, "You ref the game," it doesn't look like I'm confident. It's me saying, "Well, you might be able to do a better job, or you think you can do a better job." So if I say to them, "No, I either want you to be quiet or leave," then it's asserting my authority and making them aware I'm confident in the decisions I'm making, and I know that I'm going with my gut.
And they're all valid points, and they're so beneficial, especially as I know a young person who wants to become a referee. He's only 14 and he wants to start doing reffing, and I think those are really good points. So these are quite important when I play this back to him. But I know my assistant manager, he learned very quickly from that scenario and situation, and it can be quite difficult when you're the parent, the coach, and the referee, and then suddenly you're in that environment where you've had that abuse, where you've just turned up to take your team there, and suddenly there's been no referee allocated. So he made that decision to try and address it and to try and calm everything down, but he learned from it very quickly not to do it again. But it can be so hard when games aren't allocated referees, especially at youth levels, because there's not enough refs, or there's not enough money to pay all these referees as such from a club level, etc. So it can be quite difficult to regulate the game all the way up. And I know here in Wales, when we've invited teams from England down just to play friendlies, they've said, "Have we got a referee?" Whether that be under 10s or under 11s, for example. And we've gone, "No, because we don't play with referees here in Wales up until you're in the academy system or you hit a certain age." And they're really shocked at that. And sometimes we've had to ref from the sides between teams, and it's worked out quite well, and had that mutual understanding. But that expectation of having that referee and us going, "Well, no, we don't have them at this level and this age," they're quite shocked.
Really interesting, because I didn't know that. And I mean, I've heard all these stories of, yeah, people didn't have a ref, blah blah blah, and I will do my best to help, but there's only so much I can do. I can only be in one place at one time, but I'll always kind of try to give, if I know my friend is going to be the coach and they're going to be the one refereeing, I'll give them kind of a crash course in one evening, saying, yeah, these are the most important rules. Go with the lines people. I know they're going to be parents and they might be a bit biased, but you've got no authority to say I'm better than you, because neither of you are qualified. And I've had an experience where I had a parent who gave a corner instead of a goal kick, and I saw that it was a goal kick. And I went to him and I said, "Thank you very much for helping. I really appreciate you standing in for it, for me to help me out. But I saw it's a goal kick. Please go with it." And he didn't take that as an answer. The whole thing blew up. And I had to add about 5-10 minutes of added time just because this parent thought he knew better than an actual referee. And it's such a problem when you're trying to mix referees with non-referees, but also when you're trying to have non-referees referee a game that people are so used to having a referee in. It's kind of, people take it for granted that they get referees, but they complain when they don't have one, and then wonder why there aren't referees. And it's like, well, you're the problem. You're the reason there aren't referees. But parents don't like to hear that.
And exactly that, and it's that difficult cycle of what you say there, and that goes around where you lose referees, and then they're not used to it, and then decisions in the game don't go their way, then they expect referees, and it's that cycle which just repeats itself, and it's so difficult. And football is a game. However we address it or however we move forward, no matter what issue, whether you look at refereeing, to racism, to coach education, to recruitment, to welfare, to moral grounds, etc., and the payment of players and how it drills into grassroots, there's an endless amount of issues around the game and the stigma that's attached. But especially for young people coming through and referees, especially at a grassroots level, it can be so hard to regulate and sort of keep these young people and any individual that's interested then when they go past being a young person and to stay beyond that that time. But for you, you've been a referee coming up 3 years now, I believe. So in that time, what has been like the most difficult situation or scenario that you've encountered?
Absolutely say sexism. It works in both ways, both positive and negative. So when I'm an assistant referee in a league called the Combined Counties, and whenever I get there and people see I'm a female, they love it. I get so much praise for it, and I once had my dad and my twin sister come and watch me, and they were amazed how much support I got. But in my first ever game, I was in the middle for an under 12 boys game, and in the background, I heard someone say, "Oh, the referee should stay in this position. We've got a very nice view," when my back was towards them. And I just thought, I'm not that much older than your kids playing in the game, and you're saying that to me. It's completely inappropriate. And at the time, I didn't say anything because it was my first game. But if that was to happen again, I would have such a go at them, and I would tell them to leave. I wouldn't even let them stay and give them a second chance. But it also works outside of refereeing. When I tell people I'm a ref, they're like, "Oh, but you must get so much abuse," and I don't get that much abuse, but the sexist comments I get, you would never even imagine. I've never experienced sexism like I have when refereeing. But as I said, it's both positive and negative, and I love when it's positive, but I got to face the negative side as well. And I tend to ignore it most of the time. I'm very good at that, but sometimes it does hit me.
Which once again is that great resilience, but it can be so difficult hitting you because as I spoke to many other individuals and interviewees, is when that game is finished, whether it's finished at 4 o'clock, and then everyone's gone home and those parents are maybe having a takeaway with their kids or just doing things with their kids that they would in a typical evening, and they've moved on past the game. They don't think of the coach or referee who's gone home then, and it has to sit in that bad situation because it's all within their head. They've experienced that difficult afternoon, even if they got paid for it. It's not a great experience. So when they've healed abuse and then they've gone home and they're having a takeaway with the kids, or they're sat there, this referee's gone home or coach, and they're upset and it's difficult and they're questioning themselves and they're trying to maintain their outlook in why they do it and whether they're going to go back next week. And that's what can be so hard, to maintain that motivation and those levels that drop in and out. And that motivation level can be really hard to maintain over a long period of time, and how you sustain it.
Exactly. And as I said before, if we've had a bad game, we know we've had a bad game. We don't need you to tell us that as well. And on Wednesday, I actually had my first game with my university team as an assistant coach. And the game before it was the women's team. And the ref had a shocking game. So we weren't expecting any favours. And it wasn't the best game, but it also wasn't the worst game. And at the end of our full time, I, because it's a men's team, I stay outside the change room whilst they're getting changed. And I had a friend from the women's team who was waiting for the referee to leave. And I just thought, if that was me that had refereed that game and had that performance, and I knew it was a bad performance, but my friends were prepared to stand outside the changing room waiting for me to just rant into me about every decision I made wrong. Why is it any different when it's someone they've never met before? Because if anything, they don't have that resilience where they're like, okay, I know it's just a sport. I know maybe they got a bit emotional, but I couldn't do anything. I could only say, please don't do that. But then I also get their perspective of, yeah, we didn't win the game. It was the referee's fault. But at the end of the day, the referee only gives the decisions when a foul's been made or when they think a foul's been made. They're not the one performing on the pitch. The team that lost should have performed better. Otherwise, they kind of deserved the loss. But it is annoying when you think the referee has made a bad decision, but definitely not staying behind purposely for them, because the referee definitely knew he had a bad game. There were a lot of people watching the games and a lot of abuse hurled at him. Not from me, I would never do that. But a lot of my friends on the sideline during our game were saying, "Oh, we're waiting for you to shout at the referee." And there's that pressure of, if I say the referee's wrong, everyone thinks, oh, I know best, we want Shelley to referee the game. But it's like, well, if I was in his position and I had the angle that he had, maybe I would have given the same decision. You never know. So when I'm as an assistant coach or when I'm coaching, I try to keep kind of the comments to the referee on a down low, and I'll speak to them at the end of the game, say, look, I'm a referee, this is my perspective of the game. I don't think you made the right decision, but I understand that you had a different angle to me. And next time, maybe just, you know that you've made this wrong decision. Maybe next time you won't make the same decision again.
And that is one of the biggest lessons that I've learned is perspective and how you have that outlook between, whether you've been in that position like assistant referee or leading as ref, and how that looks on both different occasions. And it can be difficult for spectators, parents, and so on to even have that outlook in terms of, oh, so and so saw it different to the person in the middle. And that can be so difficult. And that's one of the biggest lessons, as I say, that I have learned. But when that's the case when I coached the girls' game on Wednesday, something that I allowed as ref, that is something that I would have allowed as a coach, but the PE teacher at the time taking the game said she would have given that as a foul. But that's because she was coaching, the way she looked at that was a foul from that perspective. But if I was a coach, I would have allowed that to have played on, which is why I allowed it as a ref, because I thought there was resilience. Both players bounced up, they both didn't complain, they got on with the game. One wanted to go on and push on forward at the pitch, and one wanted to recover. So I thought there were quite good life lessons in there for young players, because one of the worst things is a young player, which has learned over time as they get older, is constantly calling for fouls or going down quite easy, because then they're purposely looking for the fouls. And as we see in the professional game, it's that big question is, do you get your team to commit fouls, or do you get your team to look for fouls and try to tailor the game that way? And it can be so difficult in that sense between what is out there on TV and expected from teams, and you see the likes of Ronaldo and Messi, etc., which are constantly fouled, whether it's Ronaldo trying to get the penalty or Messi who's constantly fouled because he's so good and he want to get the ball. It's those two different outlooks which can be hard as well. But it's something that I wanted to learn. And as you say there, you was an assistant ref. So when you're assistant ref and you're leading as a ref, is there a preference which you have, or is it a balance so you don't mind sometimes being one or the other?
I've always preferred assistant refereeing. Ever since I completed my course, I straight away said to my county, my aim is to get to the top as an assistant referee. And I still stand by that. I absolutely love it. People think I'm absolutely mad for liking being an assistant referee. I've never met anyone else who's preferred it. But I've also kind of developed a love for being in the middle, because you can justify your decisions. Whereas when I'm on the line, I either say offside or foul, and that's all I can do. I've got a flag, I don't have a whistle, and I don't have a voice. So it can be a bit difficult. And I think it's a confidence thing that I don't prefer being in the middle, but it's something I'm working on, and it might change in the future. But I like being able to learn from the assistant referee on the other side and the referee in the middle, whilst kind of having my own performance. Whereas when you're in the middle, you don't get to watch the other assistant referee, so you don't get to learn from anyone. You're so focused on the game.
And they're great points within itself, because even if you have that preference to be an assistant, just sometimes going from the lead to an assistant for some games can really provide that benefit in terms of how you take that into then your refereeing, or how you approach things, or how you judge situations, etc. And it's that learning which is really important, whether you're involved or whether you're watching from the side. And it's making sure that it's not I already know everything, but how can I continue to learn everything, which is so important to try and again develop that outlook and that perspective. And the same could be said for parents and so on, in terms of understanding what the referee goes through in those decisions. But it's great that you've been open in terms of that you're willing to be an assistant, that you prefer that, how you learn from the others, how you support and work part of that team and that cohesion making those decisions. And at times, as you've said, when you have seen something from your perspective and then you've gone over to the ref and said your outlook on that was different to theirs, for example, can that be difficult in that sense then, when you're working as a small referee unit team, to sort of address a situation, but maybe the referee has said, no, you may have seen it that way, but it's definitely this way? Is that quite difficult at times to sort of deal with?
It depends on the referee. So when working in a 3 or a 4, there's always a pre-match briefing, and the referee will always say, this is what I want you to look out for, this is what I don't want you to look out for. And the main decision I think everyone thinks about the assistant referee is penalties. Do we get a say in it? And we kind of get a subtle say. We'll be able to kind of do a thumbs up or a thumbs down, but we never really talk about it because at the end of the day, we don't have VAR. We don't get a second view of it. I might have seen that it's not a foul, but that's just because I didn't see the following leg that was a foul, but the referee saw it. So maybe I just saw the non-foul part of the penalty. So I would never want to overrule a referee. It is very hard though when it's fouls because it's the cards that's the hardest part. So I might say something's a foul and then the referee goes and gives it a yellow card. But I didn't foul it. I didn't wave for a yellow card. I waved because it was a foul, and not every foul is a red or yellow card. So that's the hardest bit because you can't take back a card. But as I said, we've always got a pre-match briefing where the referee will say exactly what he wants from each referee, each assistant referee, and we don't give anything more than that and we don't give anything less than that. Some assistant referees do, and there's a real problem because some assistant referees don't understand that they're not refereeing the game. So they might say, oh no, no foul, but it's not up to them to say it's no foul. It's up to them to not wave their flag and the referee to say no foul. I like to say if there's an offside or not offside because it prevents an appeal if a goal is scored. But some referees have said, please don't say it because we don't want to kind of say offside. I give the offside and then the referee overrules me and says, no, it wasn't offside. And then there's a problem because I've told the players that I'm not giving it, but then, or I'm giving it and then the referees change the decision.
And it's working as part of a team, which is really important, especially when you're refereeing and you're the ones in charge of regulating that game as such. And the result can go one or two ways, and it can be dependent on how the ref makes those decisions. So it's really important to have those open conversations and to understand what's required of you. And when you sort of go to different grounds, and as we've already established, is when you look at situations and you've approached them, but it's these small circles. So once you could go to a ground and opposition parents are really, really negative towards you, they're constantly hurling abuse, and then you go to their ground and you're the referee appointed there. Do you hold that in your mind, that you're aware of how they acted last time, and this can become a common theme when you go to certain grounds and you're aware of how the environment might be shaped and those moments as such?
So I will use it as preparation, and there are some grounds that I've not been to, and referees have said, "Oh, if you go there, just a heads up that so and so are quite a verbal team, or they'll go down easily." But I won't make the decision until the game has started. I like to think that I'm not a biased referee at all. I don't really have the time to think, "Oh, that's a red sock, which means it's that team, which means I'm not giving it or I'm giving it." There's no time to make that decision, and same with the parents. I can't look up, be like, oh, it's that team's parent, which means I don't want to give that foul. Because at the end of the day, if it's a foul, I'm going to give it. And if it's not a foul, I'm not going to give it. But it will kind of give me that preparation of, okay, at the end of the game, I know I'm going to get someone coming to talk to me. So just every foul I make, think, is it definitely a foul? That's kind of the only difference it makes. It doesn't affect my performance at all.
And it can be hard to sort of prepare for those performances because you might already have that locked in your head of, oh, I had a bad experience last time. I know or I'm going to go into this game being completely different in my approach, or I'm going to be like this. And sometimes you have to forget that was last situation. This might be different. The exact same spectators might not be there, or the game might go differently. But it's a fresh game entirely, and sometimes it can be hard to switch off from the previous experience and always go into a game expecting one thing or another because of those past experiences. And that's what some coaches and even refs can hold within their minds. But it's that importance of adapting and knowing it's a fresh game, let's move on, and how can we move forward in this, which not everyone seems to have or have in their arsenal as such.
Yeah, and I've actually learnt that kind of slightly a hard way, but it wasn't that difficult. Where I had a coach that wasn't meant to be coaching a team, and I knew the team, and he covered the game because the other coach couldn't make it. And I made the decision to give a goal that he didn't think should be a goal. And it didn't change the game. It was kind of in extra time. The team was 3-2 up already, and it just put them 4-2. And I was about to blow the whistle for full time anyway. And at the end of the game, they said to me, oh, I wouldn't have given it, blah, blah, blah. And in a very nice and calm manner. And then I went to go referee on the line his other team where he's actually the coach, and that was a men's game rather than the youth game of the other game. And I said to him, I've been thinking about the decision a lot, and maybe I shouldn't have given it, but I felt like it didn't change the game. So I'm not beating myself up too much. But I've not seen you since, and I really want to apologise for my wrong decision. And he said, like, he's not given any other thought to it. He said his bit where he said he didn't think it should have stood the goal, but he understands it didn't change the game, but he just wanted it as a learning curve for me. And after that, I was like, okay, so I've been dwelling on this one decision, waiting to see the coach again, and he's not given any other thoughts to it. So I kind of, from then, I've come with the mentality of, if I've made a wrong decision, fine. But has anyone else remembered that it was my decision that was wrong? They're probably going to beat up the rest of the performance. No one's really going to remember me. I'm not a professional referee. Yes, I'm a female and I stand out, but no one's going to hold that against me on my next performance. So I kind of don't really dwell on stuff too much. I always reflect on my performance, but I don't dwell on the performance.
And that's an important thing, not to dwell too much, but to have that reflection, which can be important, because dwelling too much can really put you in a loophole then where you sort of drop into a sinking hole where everything's against you. You can think all the negatives, and then you end up finding more negatives than positives. Whereas if you just reflect, it can be a more positive situation. You can just move on, which is really important. And when it comes down to that, and we just go back to that sexism as such, it can be difficult then when you're regulating a game in terms of the safety around it as well, because as you say, you weren't much older than their children or can be, but sometimes you might see when someone reveals their age and you're like, what, really? But in that sense, even though you're a couple of years older, you could have actually been the same age as some of those players as a young ref at 14, 15, and you could have actually looked 18, 19, for example. And when you have these sort of men going, ooh, she can stand there, or we're in a great position here, as you say, I bet if the shoe was on the other foot and that was their daughter, their outlook would be completely different. And that's what can be difficult then for, as you say, your dad stood on the side to even hear or see that. But then that is such a difficult situation to regulate those spectators around the game and sort of the outlooks around it. And when you start going into the deeper cracks of sports and the world itself, and you find these kind of comments and people, it's a grim world as such, as shall we say. So for any young female going into what is what is called the male game is quite a difficult pathway to go down because of the personalities involved in that. And even sometimes I hate being involved in a male game because of just the environment and personalities around it.
I think being a fan of a football team helps because when I go to games, I hear so much abuse to the referees, both men's and women's, but I'm more of a fan in the men's game. And I realise that it's nothing personal. It's those comments that were made at me. It wasn't anything about me. It was just purely that I'm a female and I've got a female figure. And it's quite hard. I think being a female going in the men's game, you have to have a strong mentality, but you can build on that, but also have a reason why you're in the men's game, because people will always ask, why are you refereeing male football? I get that question probably more commonly than why am I refereeing at all. And the reason I think I'm quite lucky that I can kind of say my answer and not get an answer back is because I've got such a strong reason. That if I kind of said, oh, it's because I enjoy it, I'd then have to justify why I enjoy it, why I might not enjoy it. And that's something that's very hard to have as a girl. There's no reason why we should justify it, but that's kind of the age we're in at the moment where we have to justify why we're doing things.
Of course, and it's difficult then because I was having a conversation with someone the other day about someone being put in a situation because of the working context. And when you're in a situation where you could be going into a club and you've been allocated a change room, or you're in a situation where you've been allocated a game and you've gone there, but you're in a situation because there's only one way out or there's certain ways to get out, and you might find yourself around these males which have given you these comments, or just seen you as someone, not seen you as something, not someone, or know you for being Shelley. They just see you as the female, the one that they've whistled at, and that's what can be hard from my outlook, is that moral judgment and those grounds, which is so hard for me to switch off from. But when you're in that situation, do you feel that, or have ever felt that there is a risk for females, or in that situation where you're in that context, in that environment where it's not safe for those females as such?
I wouldn't say so, but I would say for a female who's newly qualified, take someone with to your first few games, because if something does go wrong, you've got someone there and they can kind of help you get out of it. But if something doesn't go wrong, then it's built your confidence that you don't need someone there because nothing's going to happen. It really depends where you're refereeing, who you're refereeing for. And I'm very fortunate to have had such an easy experience the past few years of refereeing. I've never had someone kind of follow me to the car. I've had people stop me in the car park, but never felt in danger or anything. And I might let parents go before me if I feel like they're going to rush away, and I'll hang back, maybe act like I'm watching another game in the surrounding area, or I'll be the first to leave. Say, thank you very much for letting me officiate this game. I'm going to go just so I can get a head start in front of the parents. But it's learning. You can kind of, refereeing is a job where you can learn a course, but you're learning on the job.
And they're all key points which, for any young person or anyone coming into refereeing or even coaching, is you learn on the job as such. But then when you look at these situations, you're like, right, am I going to be the first to get away, or am I going to allow them? Can really take you out of situations, because I've even felt as a coach where you've been bombarded by parents. You're like, right, if I had done this differently, then I perhaps wouldn't have been. And so they're really good points, especially for I've got this perspective of this young person in my head in the background. That's why I keep saying young person, because I'm constantly thinking of them, to sort of learn from just everyone else who's been in that situation. And you know, you're doing such a great job, and the game is very lucky to have you. But in that sense, you're also a football coach as well. And again, it's that different hat which you can put on between football coach and ref. So do you enjoy coaching sometimes a lot more than refing, or vice versa?
So a lot of people ask me, what do I want to go into? Do I want to be a coach or a referee? And I've honestly not made up my decision. Sometimes I wake up and I'm like, I really can't be bothered to referee today. I just want to coach. And sometimes it'll be the opposite. And sometimes I'll find myself refereeing and coaching on the same day, and I'll realize how much I enjoy both of them. But I think the biggest struggle being both is when I'm refereeing, especially in the youth game, I want to give pointers to some of the players, but I know it might come off as bias. And then when I'm coaching, I might be the one kind of saying to the ref, oh, I would do this differently, just because I know the rules. And one of the referees, the one on Wednesday, said, oh, look at this law. And I said, well, that's not actually the law that I think you mean. I think you mean a different law. And it kind of is a bit of a sneaky perspective, but I don't mean it in that way. But it's just, sometimes I like one, sometimes I like the other, sometimes I want to do both at the same time, but it's a bit difficult to do both.
And it is difficult to do both, and sometimes they can marry up with each other, as you say, and they can be helpful, but then sometimes they can go against the grain, where it can be a little bit difficult. Because I suppose if you're working with an assistant coach or lead coach, or you're in that environment and you're constantly, you know, questioning things from a referee perspective, because you have that understanding, you understand the laws, and they're letting things go and flow, whether you're managing or coaching a game, or whether it's training, etc. And they're like, oh, look, Shelley's off again, or oh, there she is with her laws. And it can be quite difficult to have that clash between coaching and refereeing as such, in terms of those outlooks. But sometimes it does bring that perspective where you can have that insight, and it's really beneficial in terms of the information that you can give your players within coaching, whereas you say you can't give that during a game, because you might be biased. But if you can give that to the players that you're coaching, then you're giving them really good knowledge, which is quite beneficial, and they're quite lucky to have a ref slash coach when you're there. And I suppose when you're as an assistant coach or leading a coach, if a referee was to call a decision one way, would you then query that after the game from your perspective, or would you leave that go, knowing that you would have been in that situation, and as you said earlier on, you might have called it that one way?
I will always approach the referee. I'm not scared of anyone. I never mean it in nasty way. It's always, I'm telling you because I would want someone to tell me if I've done something wrong. I always love to learn, and I'm also a very negative person when it comes to criticizing myself. And so I just want someone to tell me. So if someone's made a bad decision, I will go to them and I'll say, look, I don't mean this in a nasty way. I just want someone to tell me, but why did you do this? Unless if I've had a really bad day and I kind of just yell at them, and then afterwards I'm like, I'm really sorry. I didn't mean that in that way. But as I said, I'd want someone to tell me. So I do always approach them purely because I'd want someone to do it to me. And at the end of the day, there aren't that many of us out here. So we kind of have to help each other. And maybe it'll be, if I didn't tell them the mistake this time, they've made it again and someone's told them in a much worse way. And I know that I'm not going to bring out my fist. I know I'm not going to get physical, but maybe that person will.
Of course, and it relates me back to a game I remember watching, and I helped secure a referee for this, I believe, semi-final game. And one of the parents of the teams of the opposition team, he was a higher qualified ref than the current ref in the pitch, and I was there on the perspective of the other team. But I had relationships with both teams. I knew the ref and I knew the parent of the other. And it got to a situation where this young player was sent off on this semi-final game for a challenge. And the referee had made this decision, he had sent him off. And as a result, without even knowing this, it was going to be the young player's last game in youth football, because that was the situation. It was going to be his last game because he would have been then too old, and it was literally their final game of being a youth player. So he was sent off, and then the parent after the game questioned the ref, took his name, wrote it all down a note, said, "I'm a high qualified ref. I know that shouldn't have been that way. My son should still be on. He's going to play the final." And he tried to take it to appeal, and I know the referee who made the decision and won that appeal, and he said I was going to get the backing. I knew I would, but I felt so bad because I had allocated it or helped allocate the referee because they lost out on one, and suddenly then this young person, which I also coached at an academy level, was going to miss his final game, and I felt so many emotions just for trying to organise a referee and this young player, but it was such a difficult situation to even look back on now.
Yeah, it's very hard, and I've refereed for friends before, which I hate. It's the worst thing when I get assigned to a team where I know people involved, and they'll often say, "I'm really sorry for how you were treated," or apologize for something, and they didn't know that I would have that performance. They didn't know that the parents would react in that way. No one knows. At the end of the day, as a coach, you have to find the referee, and you might not know the referee, you might know them and know that they're a very good referee, but you might have caught them on a really bad day. But at the end of the day, no one's psychic. No one knows exactly how the game's going to go, and they'll pick a referee to suit that game. I mean, there was a game in the Premier League a couple of weeks ago. I can't remember who it was, but I know Arsenal was one of the teams, and it was a game that everyone thought would be an easy game, and then kind of everything went up, and it was actually probably one of the hardest games of the weekend. And I was like, the referee, it's his first time ever officiating Arsenal, and this is his introduction to the team. It's very hard, but he was probably assigned to that game thinking it was an easy game, but no one knows that it's going to be easy. No one knows that it's going to be hard. The Nottingham Forest Liverpool game today, Forest went and won, and no one would have expected that. So maybe the referee had to face a lot of abuse, but a lot of challenges from the players that no one would have expected, because the expectation was that Liverpool were going to be the team that were the favourites, that were the ones that were winning. So people are caught off guard all the time. No one can predict every score that's ever going to happen within a season. You can't pick and choose the referees a lot of the time. You're kind of given a list of names and you're like, okay, I'll choose that one. Just it's the same. You might as well be given numbers and pick your favourite number and choose the referee based on that. No one can kind of be psychic and say prepare the referee for anything.
And you never know how something's going to turn out all the way that it's going to be, and it's the same for a ref when they approach that game. And it can be the same when you're actually coaching a game that you could have gone in and expected it to go on one way, but it's gone another. But when you're coaching, do you find it difficult to connect with young people at times in terms of having a referee hat on and they see you as that official where they might have seen you ref a game to then switch into a coach role? Can that be quite difficult? Because I've worked with someone that currently in school where they're a teacher and they're head of year, and it's how that young person saw them as being a teacher and then they're head of year. So can that be difficult then to be seen as a referee and then a coach? Can it be difficult for a young person?
So sometimes it's difficult. A few weeks ago, I was refereeing for my friend's under 10s team, and I said to her, please, can you tell the players to call me referee? Don't call me Shelley, because I'm not their friend on the pitch. I'm going to give the decision I think. And most of the time, they were brilliant. And at one point, one of them said, Shelley, oh, no, referee. And it hit me in the heart, because it was like, oh no, I want to be seen as your friend when I'm your coach, but when I'm refereeing, I'm not really your friend, because I don't want to come across as biased. And I wasn't biased at all in the game. But if the other coach heard them call my name, it's like, why do they know you and we don't? And a lot of the time when I'm coaching, I'll try to not bring in my refereeing knowledge, but I'll let the players ask me questions if they want to. So if someone says, oh, if I do something like this, is it going to be a foul? Then I can give them the answer. But I won't say, if you do it like this, it'll be a foul. I'll let them kind of approach me rather than approach them. But yeah, sometimes it can be difficult. Sometimes the more challenging players will respect me a bit more for being a referee, because they know that I have the knowledge to back up what I'm telling them. But sometimes players will say, "Oh no, you're more of a referee than a coach. I don't think that you're the person suited for the job." But it's all about earning respect. You kind of have to do it in any job that you've got, but being a referee and a coach can sometimes be a bit more difficult.
Of course, and being in those situations and trying to filter between both those hats can be quite difficult, as we've mentioned numerous times. But for you, when it comes into coaching, is there a certain level in terms of coaching that you want to go to? Like, I know you say you wanted to go quite far in the refereeing, but is that the same in coaching, or are you just happy to do a bit of coaching and to see where it leads you, for example?
I would absolutely love to be the manager of Arsenal. I'm an Arsenal fan, and that would be the dream job. But it's quite hard. It's a challenge that's probably quite unrealistic. But I believe you have to have unrealistic goals and expectations. Otherwise, what's the point in you having small ones? But I just want to have an impact on the game. Being a girl, wanting to be in the men's game, whether it be as a referee or a coach, I just want to play my part, whether it be me being the first referee in the Premier League or being the first female coach or manager in the Premier League. I just want to kind of open up the doors for either myself or for other girls. Not I don't know, maybe in the next 30 years, it's not possible for a girl to have an impact of being the first in there. But I mean, Emma Hayes was asked to be the manager of Wimbledon men a few years ago, and she turned it down because she didn't want the job. But it just proves that there are opportunities out there. And as I said, whether it be me doing it myself or me opening the door for the next generation, I just want to have an impact on the game. It would be nice to be remembered. That would kind of be the goal. But if I can open the doors for the next person and then be remembered, then I know I've played my part.
And it's great that you're looking in that outlook and that perspective that you want to be remembered, and it's much more than what you're just doing here now. It's much more than just you, but can you have a bigger impact? Can you lay a way for other females and individuals to come through the game, which is fascinating and great to have, and to have that impact, which is going to be great because already you can tell you're a great referee, you're a great person to have involved in the sport in terms of your outlook and that connection with the players and what you want to try and bring to the game, which is fascinating and great to have. So I know the sport is very lucky to have you. And I hope you go a very long way. And it would be great if you could break those barriers and break those stigmas, and set your own accolades, which would be great, and to especially see how far you can go, whether that's refereeing or coaching, or whether you retire as a ref and become a coach and be a first for doing that. We don't know, but they would be incredible outlooks to sort of have and achieve. And for all those times when your dad has been stood there, for example, and your parents, and they've seen some of the difficult situations which you've gone through, and just being able to watch themselves, but then to have gone, look, oh, Shelley's made it, oh, yeah, that's amazing, would be really great for them as well as yourself.
Yeah, exactly. And my friends always say, if you make it to the top, remember our names. And I always say, well, when I get a box seat in any stadium, you guys can be the ones filling it up. And yeah, I don't, sometimes I do things for myself, but a lot of the time, it's not an individual that can get to the top. You need everyone behind you. And I get so much support from Middlesex FA, my county, and without them, I wouldn't even be kind of refereeing or coaching. And same with my uni, the lecturers are outstanding. They keep encouraging me and the other girls. And I just get annoyed that men can be managers and referees in the women's game, but why can't it be the opposite? So, as you said, it's breaking the barriers, breaking kind of the stereotypes, and playing my part and doing it for my family and my friends as well.
Which I truly hope that you do, and you go on to achieve those things. And as you say, it's why can a male do it but not a female? And hopefully we can see a female break through and get into that, get through that door and break down those barriers. But I'm not sure whether you saw the West Ham documentary on BBC 3 years ago about the women's, but even though there's men in the female game, I remember I got the name in my head, but I don't want to mention it for certain reasons. But this one individual actually kissed one of the female players. In an embrace of the success that they had, or the situation. But with me, I was sat there like, was that really justified? Would that be allowed? Is it allowed? Should it be questioned? It could have just been that, yeah, it was great, kiss, bang. But if it was in the other way around, and girls in male sports, and it's that moral judgment and ground between what would be allowed as such, and what can be difficult, again, back to that female situation. And I just remember it sitting with me like, I don't know how I felt about that.
Yeah, 100%. And as I said, my uni team, I'm working with the men's side, and the other coaches are all males. So they do the classic thing of when a substitution's going on or someone's just scored, they kind of tap their bum. And I'm like, no, I'll give you a high five instead. I wouldn't feel comfortable doing it myself, but I also wouldn't feel comfortable people seeing me do it, because I don't want anyone to get the wrong impression. I'm there purely as a coach. I I want to keep that boundary. And it's quite sad that we have to look at it. But at the end of the day, it is men working the women's game and it is women working the men's game. There are always going to be barriers that no one can change. I mean, there are national teams standing up against their coaches, claiming that there's all sorts going on behind the scenes. And there are physios that are female working the men's game. And you kind of think, well, is there a man or another lady standing in the room whilst they're doing the treatment? Because maybe if they've got a hamstring injury, the hamstring goes quite high. Could it be seen as quite inappropriate if on the pitch you see someone of the opposite gender massaging somewhere that might look like an inappropriate place, but it's not? And it's sad that we have to justify it, but I think the fact that it works both in the men's game with the women and so women work in the men's game and vice versa, that it's nothing about being sexist or anything. It's purely about just kind of making people aware that some things happen, some things are socially accepted within the sport and others aren't.
And it's great that you say that you have been supported by Middlesex FA, sorry, and that they're there to support you. But as you've mentioned, there is those players standing up for the change, as we have seen, and that was quite apparent with the Spanish FA, where the females all wrote that letter, and then suddenly the morning after, these letters were all rescinded, apparently, and they weren't involved. So overnight they've had some political calls, and the industry has gone against them in that way, which not many of us will know because of what's gone in the background. But but it's great that you've had that support, and hopefully the game is opening up in that way, because some of what you see behind the scenes and higher up is everything is political in my outlook. No matter what happens, there's political perspective on it, and it can be so difficult in terms of how that filters down through the game. It's not just this game of sport which everyone thinks it is. There's this whole dark world which it actually is that surrounds it, and if you think, and you know, when you go in thinking it's just a sport or anything other, that's a little bubble inside this dark world. It can be so hard for anyone to come through, and how it's even seen. And I know, for example, young coaches, it's difficult for them to try and get on higher levels such as their UEFA and Pro, because they're not ex-players. But Jose Mourinho is setting the way for, you know, that being a different stance. But it can be hard then when the national FA are going, right, you're not an ex-player, but we're going to prioritise these ex-players because it makes us look better, because we've got these players through and they're bigger names as such. So it can be quite a difficult pathway to be on, and it's that self-belief which has to keep you on that pathway, whether that's coaching, refereeing, or whether you're marrying at both, or whatever approach you have in the sport, whether it's a therapist or psychologist, etc. It's about not giving in and having your outlook, as you say, to see how far you can go.
Exactly, and what you said about prioritising ex-players or even current players looking to get their coaching badges, I think it's very difficult because football is so massive in the UK. There are so many levels to the game, and there are so many names that are just unheard of. So being at a football uni, I hear kind of all the people that have made where they want to be. So they've got their UEFA licenses, their pro licenses, but no one knows it because they don't know them. So it's quite difficult because when you don't know that there are people who have made it that aren't players, aren't ex-referees or anything, then you think it's not possible, but it really is possible. And it's quite sad that I learned it coming to a football university because I didn't know it before. But not everyone wants to go to UCFB. Not everyone wants to specialise in football from the age of 18 or 19 or even older. Some people, my twin sister, for example, she's gone down sport and wants to specialise in football when it comes to kind of her dissertation and her masters. So it's very hard, but it's kind of believing that it's happened before. Even if it hasn't, you can kind of convince yourself that it has, and kind of use your imagination as your role model. And as I said, I want to pave the way for other girls as well as myself. And that's when I'm going to, like, my name will be heard. And it might even be if I don't make it all the way to the top, someone like you might go and pass on my story to other people. And whilst they won't know me personally, they'll know my name and know, okay, Shelley's the one that's a female referee and a female coach in the men's game. It is possible to do it, even if most of the other people doing it are ex-players, ex-referees, ex-whatever within the game.
Absolutely, and you know, hopefully that we can pass on your story and what you're trying to do, because it is incredible. And as we sort of talk more, and you're naturally coming out, the fact that you've got a twin sister and a brother just shows that you've got a family enterprise there within sports already. Whether one of you does the coaching and goes into sports, or whether one of you's refereeing, there's certainly an enterprise there to marry it all up, which is fantastic. And then you've got the Howard franchise in sports industries there, and Shelley's been seen as the one breaking the barrier. So it's incredible that you're all in the sports and you're all doing your own individual thing, and hopefully you can all be heard of in terms of what you're doing. But it's great to sort of have individuals that are not ex-players or not recognised names come through, and then they build a name for themselves and go far, which is truly incredible for anyone who goes and makes that name for themselves. And in that sense then, just before I let you go, in terms of that question then, do you think it would be good for ex-players to be trained as referees and then for them to have a period of refereeing, as suggested by those pundits on Sky Sports?
Yeah, so just on the family thing, I've actually got a little sister as well, and she's not into sports at all. I don't really understand how we're related, but she'll go and tell mine and my family stories to all her friends. Kind of everyone in my family's been involved in football specifically in some way or another, including my parents. And that kind of gets the awareness of kind of just people that are being themselves and making it somewhere in the game, which is really nice. You don't necessarily have to be involved in football or in sport to make an impact on the sport. And I think it is very difficult with ex players because obviously they'll be able to bring in the insight of they've been in a changing room on match day, they know the processes. Me, for example, on Wednesday, I was saying to the boys, I'll have a kind of step back approach because I've never been here before. I don't know what you guys do in the change room pre-game. I don't know what you do with the referee. I don't know what you do in terms of a warm-up. And that actually got me to say something. And I said, look, I don't have anything to say because I don't know what the process is. And it was a bit awkward, me sitting there being like, it's just because I've not been in this position before that I can't say anything. Whereas ex players have that. They can, someone who's sat in the room with Sir Alex Ferguson or Arsene Wenger will have the most amazing things to pass on to the next generation if they take on the coaching route. And someone like Jack Wilshere has proven that you can retire young and then become a coach, but he's been able to kind of become a coach through the Arsenal Academy because he had the relationship with Arsenal. Someone like me who, yes, I'm an Arsenal fan, but no one at Arsenal knows me. How am I meant to get into the job when I'm competing with people that have the contacts and kind of have the experience? Because everyone says it's not what you know, it's who you know, and that is a point to a certain extent. But if you're passionate enough to go into the sports, you want it more than the people that are known, then you're going to make it. It's just believing in yourself, because if you don't believe in yourself, why should anyone else believe in you? So that's kind of something I remind myself of all the time. And every time I go on any kind of weekend away, any course, I will make note of everyone I've met, because they might not remember me, but I can say, look, I met you on this occasion, on this day doing this. You might not remember me, but I want to now have an impact on your life because I'm in that mindset. I'm ready for it now. I'm ready for you to remember who I am.
And that's great. And, I'm just writing down what you've just said there because there's some good points and I want to remember these even though I'll watch it back. So that's what I've just been doing throughout, making little notes of what you've been saying. But it's great that you want to go through and you want to make a name for yourself. And it's the exact same situation as I feel sometimes is how are we going to get through, because it can be sometimes who you know, not what you know, and having these connections which can be so difficult. And then you feel like there's glass ceilings above you because you feel like, oh, unless you've got an ex-playing career or unless you're known or unless you've got these contacts, it can be quite hard in terms of how you look at that progression. But as long as you stay focused and you know you have that motivation, you keep pushing, you're striving, and you want it more than those who are already known, then you're definitely going to go far in terms of what you want to do and what you want to achieve. And especially when you have so many experiences like yourself. And it's great that I've had you on a podcast where we spoke mostly about refereeing, which is great, especially as a first referee and first female referee. So 2 accolades there for you, which is great for me. But then we could have spoken about a lot more about coaching, but it just shows when you go off and you continue to build on your experiences, and as you start going into the bigger games, whether it's assistant refereeing or then you're appointed lead ref, or whether you're coaching a game, managing a game, or whatever pathway you go down, it's great because you're going to have so many different stories to talk about, which builds a world around Shelley Howard, which is truly incredible. And it's great that you believe in yourself and you know where you're going to go, because you can see that within your eyes, you can see it within that smile, and it's great that you want to go off and achieve these things, and I truly hope that you do, and I wish you the very best of luck. And I'm very glad that I met you. I'm very glad that you've been able to come on the podcast. I'm gutted that our conversation is over, but I'm really appreciative of your time, and I really wish you the best of luck in everything.
Thank you. And yeah, I'll definitely keep you updated as to what I'm up to. You'll definitely see it all on social media. I try to be quite active, but I'm also rubbish at the same time. And it's just, as I keep saying, it's just about doing stuff for myself, but as well as for other people, just starting the pathway for others. It might not be possible for me to do it during my lifetime, but it might be possible in the next generation. And I can be the one that can be the role model at the start of their careers, maybe not at the top, but it's just what I can do for other people as well as for myself.
And again, I love that there's so many little things which I could cut and clip there, and so many little great moments. But I hope you have a great afternoon. I hope you have a great rest of your weekend. And again, it's been truly great speaking to you. And even, if you're not posting, feel free to drop me a message or whatever. But I'm really grateful and very sad at the same time. But thank you very much.
Thank you, no problem. And if you ever have any questions or want any advice or anything, whether it be you've had a poor decision in a game from a referee and you want to know if it was actually the right decision, even though you thought it was poor, then I'm more than happy to answer. I get it all the time and I love it because I feel like I have made it even just that step further if people are coming to me for advice. Because being a 19-year-old girl, being a student, you don't get it very often. A lot of my friends kind of say, "Oh, I'm so proud of you," and I'm like, "Thank you, me too." And yeah, it just puts that extra smile on my face that other people appreciate that I'm proud of myself. I love doing what I'm doing. As you said, I try to smile all the time. I actually get sore cheeks quite a lot. But if that's my impact and kind of people approach me just because I'm smiling, then I've done my bit there.
And again, a fantastic clip that I could clip again. But it's great that you have that outlook. It's great that people can approach you. It's great that you're open to that. And they're very lucky to know you and very lucky to get in touch with you. But keep smiling. And again, thank you very much from me.
Thank you.
No worries.
Thank you,
Thank
and
you.
have a lovely afternoon.
And you. Bye.
Bye.